Okay, so once again, it's helpful to separate the two stories out as I have and read them separately.
Yeah.
When you read them straight through, it's hard to track what's happening when and by whom and to whom. But when you read
Yes.
them separately, you really do feel that you've got two separate stories, and they
Yeah.
make each one make sense in its own right. And so, just by way of reminder, when we last saw the blue story, we had blood everywhere.
Mhm.
Every gathering piece of water, every pool, pond, lake, river, stream, the Nile itself, everything was water, was blood, and was turned into that blood by Aaron under Moses' direction, striking the ground. And in fact, you may recall that the blood even was seeping out of rocks and wood. The follow up finally to that part of the story is this blue line here in verse 22. Vayechazak lev paro v'lo shama alehem ka'asher diber Adonai. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, was strengthened, really, uh, the and did not listen to them. And again, we have Moses and Aaron here in that story, just as God had said it would be. When you read the red story and you go from the red here to verse 23, again, you don't really know that this what needed to be there. It follows straight from 22, first half to 23, as we'll see. So we read this, and then we'll now skip it because it was attached to a previous story. In the red story, where we left off last week, was Moses took the rod, the staff, and Moses hit the Nile, confronting Pharaoh at the Nile River, and said, "Watch what happens." And it turned red and really became a sewage plant. A big red sewage plant was the Nile River. And the consequence of that, of course, was that the fish all died, adding to the stink. And that's where we pick up again. The reminder, verse 21, picks up from last week. V'hadaga asher bayaor meta vayiv'ash hayaor v'lo yachlu Mitzrayim lishtot mayim min hayaor vayehi hadam b'chol eretz Mitzrayim. So the hadaga asher bayaor, the fish that was in the Nile, meta, dies. And daga is a singular feminine, so meta, dies, is a singular feminine. So I don't know if they intended that only the female fish died, or again, an oratorical device, as the generic term for fish in Hebrew then would have been feminine. But in any case, the consequence, Vayiv Ash Hayor, and the Nile stinked.
It's feminine in French too.
Yeah, Hadaga Meta. Whereas if it was Hadag, it would be Met. So the fish stank up the Nile. The whole thing stank up. V'lo yachlu Mitzrayim lishtot mayim. And so lo yachlu, they were not able. The they is the Mitzrayim, Egypt. And again, it's Egypt here rather than Egyptians. So we get Mitzrayim, not Mitzrim. But that's a received reading because remember in the Torah, the consonants are the same for both Mitzrayim and Mitzrim. So we don't know if the original author audience was hearing Mitzrim or they were hearing the received traditional reading of Mitzrayim. So
That's,
we don't know for sure whether the original translation might have been, and the Egyptians were not able, or and Egypt was not able.
but we use the same language now,
Yes,
right?
but
You
did
could
did they then?
we could say France erupted in riots, right?
Yes,
Or, meaning the people erupted, or France made some governmental action, right?
Right. And that's the question is, did they then? Was our language structures the same back then with the Hebrew, or were they more strictly Mitzrayim was the place and Mitzrayim were the people?
Hmm.
Was this about concept or grammar?
So, and yes, what was their grammar?
Right.
And with the Torah text, we don't know.
Let
But
alone their grandpa.
we know in this case it was the people.
Right. We
Because
know
it,
it was the
We
people,
don't know.
but was Mitzrayim the generic term for the people, or
oh, I
did the
see.
original author say Mitzrayim?
I
Oh,
see.
oh.
Ah, okay, Mitzrayim.
And again, we have the received tradition that it was read Mitzrayim, but the reading, the vocalization of the text, which is based on the received reading, we don't know when the received reading started in that form, and was that when there was a grammar switch.
Ah, I see. Because the
So
vowels were added for us.
yeah, I mean, just a little puzzle,
Yeah.
not of any major consequence,
Mhm.
but Lo Yachal Mitzrayim would be the way we might say it in Hebrew now, whereas they said Velo Yitzliachlu, and were they saying Mitzrayim? Just minor points in grammar, but a reminder that the Torah text is not always does not always tell us what they were actually saying and hearing.
But wouldn't they have to put a hey before the Egyptians or not?
Oh, Egyptians in general, Egyptians couldn't.
An Egyptian couldn't, the Egyptians could. But there's so many hays
Yeah,
in
there are, yeah, a lot of definite articles.
yeah.
Any case, we know from the context that it's the people who least tot mayim were not able to drink water. And again, from the blue text, we would think they couldn't drink any water from anywhere. In the red story, we are told specifically, lo yachlu lishtot mayim min hayaor.
Mm-hmm.
They were not able to drink water from the Nile.
Yeah.
So again, we have a different way of staging this if we were doing this based on the two different stories. When they're put together, we no longer puzzle those things quite as much. When we separate them out, we can say who did what to whom. Pharaoh, Moses, Aaron, God, Nile, all water. But here it's pretty clear, I would say, when we're reading the story by itself, that it was only the Nile that turned into blood, and they couldn't drink water from the Nile. Vayehi hadam b'chol eretz Mitzrayim, and the blood was in all the land of Egypt. But again, within the context here, not knowing the blue story, the blood was all over the land of Egypt because the Nile irrigated all of the land of Egypt.
Mm. Yes.
Verse 22, Vayasuchen chartumei Mitzrayim belatehem. And so we have now the picture. Moses strikes the water, the Nile, and turns it into blood. And Pharaoh's magicians, the chartumei Mitzrayim, the magicians of Pharaoh of Egypt, belatehem, with their spells, with their enchantments, their incantations, Vayasuchen, and they did the same thing, and they did thus. Isn't that fun? Moses said, I'm going to make the Nile into blood. And the magician said, we can do that too. Let's make it even more bloody. The next thing after the magicians copy Pharaoh and do it is Vayifen Paro Vayavo El Beito. And so Pharaoh ignores them and goes home. So again, we don't need that statement about strengthening the heart of Pharaoh at this, the first of the plagues, because this is the first plague, but not the first encounter. We had the staff turning into a snake, and the magicians did it also. And now Moses makes the Nile blood, and the magicians do it also. And so the implication here without the blue text is Pharaoh's not impressed. So vayavo el beito velo shat libo gamzot. And so Pharaoh then ignores what happened, turns away from it. Vayavo el beito, and he comes home. Velo shat libo, and he did not put his heart gamzot also to this. So again, we don't need that statement vayechazak, that Pharaoh strengthened his heart, because verse 23 says Pharaoh's heart did not put any merit or weight into this. So Pharaoh did not turn his heart in favor of Moses also to this, as he had not in the snake staff story.
Where does it say not hardened? I see not listened, but where does it say not hardened?
In the blue, it doesn't say not hardened, it says he hardened, he
Okay.
strengthened.
Right.
But here, Veloshat, he did not put his heart also to this.
Did not put his heart. Where can you point to those words?
Veloshat libo.
Oh, after that.
Yeah, we're in the red.
Hello.
So the blue tells us his heart was strengthened. The red tells us he just didn't pay attention. He didn't put his heart to it. His heart wasn't in it. His magicians are copying Moses, so he's not impressed by this Moses God or this Moses magic trick. No fooling Pharaoh here. Moses' magic doesn't do anything more than Pharaoh's magicians can do. So he did not put his heart to it. 24, Vayach Peru Chol Mitzrayim Svivot Hayaor Mayim Lishtot Ki Lo Yachlu Lishtot Mimeme Hayaor. And verse 24 is one of the most telling that, again, when you read the whole story, we sort of ignore it or don't pay attention to it or don't puzzle over it as much. So it says, Vayach Peru Kol Mayim, Kol Mitzrayim, and all of Egypt dug. Chafar is to dig in the dirt. In other words, digging up wells. So they dug up wells, Svivot Haya'or, all around the Nile. So they dug down below the Nile level into the lower water table, below the earth, and to find Mayim Lishtot, water to drink. Now, it doesn't tell us here whether they found water to drink in those wells or not. It simply says they couldn't drink from the Nile, so they dug up wells all around the Nile for water to drink. Ki lo yachlu lishtot mimei hayaor, because they were not able to drink from the waters of the Nile.
Can you do that from the
So
knot?
yes, so Vayach Peru Chol Mitzrayim, and dug up wells, all of Egypt, Svivot Hayaor, all around the Nile, Mayim Lishtot, for water to drink. They dug up water to drink. Ki lo yachlu, because they were not able, lishtot, to drink, mimei hayaor, from the waters of the Nile. We're not told here whether they were successful in finding water to drink in those wells that they dug. But what we are told is it's very specifically the water of the Nile that's blood. Whereas in the blue story, we were told very specifically it was all places where you could find water, lakes, streams, ponds, etc. We're going to find that, by the way, when we come down to the frogs next. Same thing. Where do the frogs come from? Where are the frogs? In the red story, everything is in the Nile, from the Nile. In the blue story, it's all the waters. This, by the way, is still in keeping with my original thesis from way back 6 years ago in Genesis, that the blue story are the coastally aware people, would know that all waters are interactive and interchangeable with each other. and the inland people who see the water only from its source in some kind of wadi or river or stream. So 25. Vayimale shivat yamim acharei hakot Adonai et hayor. And now Vayimale is fulfilled or filled up. Malay is filled. So we had a full Shivat Yamim, 7 days. So a week now has gone by of no water from the Nile that's not blood.
Can you do that, which is
Yes,
with,
Vayimale Shivat
yeah,
Yamim,
yeah,
and was filled 7 days.
yeah, I got that.
Acharei hakot Adonai et hayor, after the striking by Adonai, by Yud, of the Nile. And here it's not after the striking by Moses, but the striking by God.
Mm.
Because Moses was the one who said, look at this staff. This is the staff of God. God is doing this to you. Whereas in the earlier part of the story, it seems like Moses is saying, look at my magic versus your magic. But in the red story, it's look at my God versus your gods. In the blue story, it's much more the magic of Aaron's staff at the direction of Moses from God. So
Better.
7 days go by, a week of bloody Nile goes by, a full week, a full 7 days after God strikes the water. 26. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, bo el Paro, va'amarta elav, ko amar Adonai, shalach et ami vayavduni. So once again, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, God says to Moses, and now we have God speaking, bo el Paro, come to Pharaoh. And once again, it's come to Pharaoh, not go to Pharaoh. Va'amarta elav, and you will say to him. And now an internal quote within the quote. This is what God is saying to Moses to say to Pharaoh. Ko amar Adonai, thus says my Yud Gai, shalach et ami va'avduni, send out my people and they will serve me. This is the message that Moses carries. The only message really that Moses keeps carrying is send out the people and they will serve me. And this is Moses telling Pharaoh what God said. 27. Continuing now what God tells Moses to tell Pharaoh, Ve'im ma'en ata l'shaleach hine anochi nogef et kol gvulcha batzfardeim. Moses is supposed to say to Pharaoh that God said to Moses to tell Pharaoh, Im ma'en ata, and if you remain stubborn, if you still refuse, l'shaleach, to send out, that is to send out the people, hine, behold, anochi nogef et gevulcha, then I will afflict your borders, your boundaries, your all-aroundnesses. Everything I will afflict with Sephardim, frogs. So Nogef is an affliction, a plague. And here we're finally told that this is going to be one of the 10 plagues. We weren't told that blood was a plague. We were told it was a striking.
Mhm.
Now we're told frogs are a plague.
What is
28.
the
Yes.
what's Gavul Lecha?
Gavul is your borders, your
Oh, the
boundaries,
borders.
your all-aroundnesses.
Yeah.
So instead of saying the land, it says right up to your borders.
Mm-hmm.
28. V'sharatz hayaor tzfardeim va'alu uva'u b'veitecha uvachadar mishkovcha va'al mitatecha uvaveit avadecha uva'amecha uvetanurecha uvamisharotecha. Getting very specific. And this is again continuing what God tells Moses to tell Pharaoh. Let my people go. Send the people out to serve me. And if you continue to refuse, then this is what I'm going to do to you. And here it is what will happen with these frogs that are going to be in all of your plague, in all of your borders, boundaries, in all of your area. Bisharatz hayaor tzfardiim. Sharats, we remember way back in the beginning of Genesis of the swarmings.
Yeah, the swarmings.
So now we'll swarm the Nile with frogs. Frogs will swarm the Nile. And they will swarm the Nile so much, va'alu, they will go up. That is, they're going to hop up from the Nile. Uva'u b'veitecha, and they will come in your houses. So these frogs are going to swarm up out of the Nile, and they're going to come into your houses, not only in your houses, b'veitecha, but they're going to come v'chadar ha-mishkavcha, they're going to come into your rooms of lying down, your sleep rooms, or your nap rooms, or your any place where you lie down. And they're going to come al mitatecha, and on your bed. So they're going to come to your house, to your sleep room. They're going to be on your bed, uvaveit avadecha, and they're going to be in the house of your servants, uva'amecha, and your people, uvetanurecha, and in your ovens, uvamisharotecha, and in your threshing floors, your kneading areas, your kitchens. You're going to open your oven, and Kermit's going to pop out and say, "Hi, it's not easy being green."
Which part of that last word is kneading? Knead?
So tanur is an oven, and mishara is a kneading area.
Meeting?
No.
K-N-E, kneading.
Oh,
That is, even before you open your oven, when you go and throw your dough down on the table to knead it and make it into bread, frogs are going to be in the dough. They're going to
Yummy!
hop
Frog
all around,
legs.
and you can have frog's leg bread, baked frog's leg bread.
Nice to have protein in your carb.
So apparently, they didn't like frog's legs.
as
Or
much
they
as,
didn't like,
as much as some of us do.
yeah, as opposed to those who don't keep kosher can.
I think a lot of things weren't
What
edible.
is not
till the
kosher
French
about
did
frogs?
it.
Frogs live in the water and don't have fins and scales. Or frogs live on the land and don't have cloven hoof and chew their cud. So amphibians, by their very nature, can't be kosher,
It's a shame.
depending on if they're viewed as a water animal, they're not kosher. If they're viewed as a land animal, they're not kosher. And there is no kosher rule for amphibians.
So were the kosher rules set up by the rabbis, or is it actually in the Torah?
The kosher rules are in the Torah and were set up by the rabbis, based on the Torah.
Because
The
the only
Torah
thing I
very
knew,
specifically says if it lives on land, here are the categories you can eat. If it lives in
yes,
the water,
yes,
here are the categories you can eat. If it flies in the air, here's a list of what you can eat, and here's a list of what you can't eat. And if it hops around on 6 legs and its knee joint is higher than its body, you can eat it. But if its knee joint is not higher than its body, you can't eat it.
What
Cha-
what is the
Chapulines, grasshoppers, you can't eat then, right?
So you can. Locusts are kosher.
Oh my gosh, I've heard everything.
what
So you can eat fried grasshoppers. You just can't eat chocolate covered ants.
Wait, but aren't grasshoppers, don't they have their knees above their?
Yes, that makes them kosher,
Oh, okay, good.
Oh,
Okay.
like locusts.
what is the current thinking that explains why these rules, which was, at some point I was taught that it was because they were unhealthy.
Yeah, okay. So let me close out our text and then we can take a few minutes on kosher rules which aren't here but are elsewhere. Uh, so 29, so the frogs are everywhere, which led into our frogs here, frogs there, a song that we sing.
Frogs everywhere.
So uvacha ba'amecha uvachol avadecha ya'alu hatzfardeim and wept vacha wept uva'amecha and in your people and in your servants, all your servants will come up uh, uh, and will be the frogs. So the frogs will be everywhere. Just a quick look at next week.
Wait a give me 1 second to get to next week, please.
Yep. Quick look at next week. Now we pick up the frog story in the blue story, and then we go back to the frog story in the red story. So again, go from here to second half of verse 3, and you won't notice that you are missing anything in verse 2, 1 and 2. Go from the blue here, which was the end of the blood story, to the beginning of next week, and you won't notice that you missed anything in the red story. They follow with each other. So here's just for reading for next week. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, Emor el Aharon, Nete et yadcha b'matecha al hanaharot, al hayeorim, v'al ha'agamim, v'al ha'tzfardeim, al eretz Mitzrayim. 2. Vayet Aharon et yado al meimei Mitzrayim, v'ta'al hatzvardeya, v'tchas et eretz Mitzrayim, v'yasu chen hachartumim balatehem. And again, we're back to Aaron doing it at the direction of Moses, at the direction of God. And then we go back to the red story where Moses and Pharaoh are having the interchange and God's doing it. Vaya'alu et hatzvardeim al eretz Mitzrayim. Vayikra Pharaoh l'Moshe ula Aharon. Vayomer and notice the ayin is sort of a pause, but not actually vocalized. Tiru el Adonai vayaser hatzvardeim mimeni ume'ami va'ashalcha et ha'am vayizbechu l'Adonai. 5. Vayomer Moshe leFaro hitpa'er alai lematai atir lecha v'la'avadecha ula'amcha lahachrit hatzvardeim mimcha umibatecha rak bayor tisharna. 6. Vayomer lemachar vayomer kidvarcha lema'an teda ki ein kadonai Eloheinu. So again, we'll take that apart next week. So just a quick statement about kashrut, which will come later in the Torah. There is no kashrut in Genesis, and there's no kashrut yet here in Exodus. Only later will God say to Moses to tell Pharaoh, here's what you can eat and here's what you cannot eat. Why does God say that? According to the Torah, God says it so that the Israelites, the God's people, the Moses followers, will know they're different from everyone else. The real question to Torah is not why are these things kosher, but why is there kosher?
Yeah.
These things is a secondary aspect. Later, by rabbinic times, the question has shifted from not why is there kosher, but why are these things kosher?
Mm.
One of the answers that was given in later in rabbinic and into modern times is the idea of health.
Yeah, that's
Certain animals are intrinsically more healthy than others. There's a little problem with that in that the pig is not the dirtiest animal in the farm.
Yeah.
The chicken is.
Yep.
but I
Wasn't
Pigs
think
it?
don't like to be dirty.
but I think
Chickens will walk in anything and eat anything.
But isn't
but
it
pig,
that undercooked people were getting sick from chicken
Actually,
roosters?
the most common tapeworm that I would see in the hospitals in outside of New York when I was growing up and could always bring a tapeworm to biology class was fish tapeworm
Oh.
in old Jewish women who were tasting their
Making
gefilte fish while they were making it.
No, I think, didn't I tell you that when I was in Peru, I got very sick from ceviche
Yes,
because
of
the fish,
course.
right? And when I
So,
came home, I showed my medical student brother
yeah,
my lab reports because it took forever to get over it. And he said, "Oh, that's what the little Jewish women in New York
exactly.
have
So
from
therefore, the
taking the
idea
gefilte fish and
that
licking
pigs
the
have more
hairs."
parasites than other animals is not actually true. There is fish tapeworm, there is
I
pig
think it
taste
probably
tapeworm,
looked
and
that
there is
way.
beef tapeworm.
Wow.
And of course, in more recent times, there is mad cow disease.
Hmm.
Wow.
So, no, it was not, I believe, health. But if you answer the question so that you will be different from the other people around you, then we get, I believe, a better answer. Why the sheep and lambs and cloven hoof and chewing cud animals? Because those were the flock herding animals.
Interesting.
And why not the pigs? Because those were the sedentary farm animals, which was the Canaanites. And why not? And we get a whole list of other animals that are not either chewing their cud or cloven hoof. And we get the rabbits and wild boar and other kinds of things because we were not a hunting people, we were a flock herding people inland. And therefore, that's why that. By the way, in the blue story, there is no kashrut.
Hmm.
It's in the red story because the coastal people wouldn't have had that kind of issues. And only later do the coastal people have a kashrut. And again, I believe that we can justify that on the basis of the inland people. What fish did they eat? The fish that you caught from lakes and streams, which they noticed, unlike the other kinds of things that used for bait, like mollusks, these had fins and scales. And so water animals became fins and scales. Again, the question was why be kosher? Because to separate. Now God says, here, I'll tell you what. The animals that you have readily available, you can eat those. The animals you don't have readily available, you can't eat those. And in fact, even in America 300 years ago, lobster was fed to prisoners because it was junk food.
Mhm. Yeah.
And shrimp are called in
Cheap
some
and plentiful.
cultures sea roaches. And sea robins and catfish are just yucky. And eels, they foul your net. Who wants them? Crabs, who wants them? They just get in the way of the real
But
fish.
The
scallops.
texture of
Mm.
eels are disgusting.
Scallops are bait. So yeah, so it would be that. And then as far as things that fly, there was no real obvious difference between the ones that you had as your regular food source and ones that you didn't, like water animals and land animals. So therefore, they couldn't give you a category, they just gave you a list. And the list was those things that we tended to domesticate, you could eat. And that's why doves are on that list. Pigeons are on that list. Chickens and things like that are on that list. And then the animals that were not domesticated, scavengers and birds of prey, were not on that list.
And what about sparrows? A lot of people eat sparrows.
Yeah, well, I don't think they knew about them. And later, once they knew about them, the question was, did they domesticate sparrows for eating? And the answer was no. So therefore, they wouldn't have been. Whereas turkeys, when they discovered them, were domesticated for eating, and therefore you could eat them. And ducks and whatever.
Canada geese.
Only if you not in the wild, but and in fact you can domesticate geese,
Mhm.
and then they can be kosher.
Mhm.
My favorite bird
So-
that is not kosher is the bat.
Is that, but that's not a bird.
It's on the list of flying things that you can't eat.
Bat.
So therefore, it's not actually a list of birds, it's a list of flying things.
It's not a bird.
Wow.
All
And
right,
you're
so
saying
you've
it's,
got your
wait,
work.
you're saying it's your favorite because you love eating it? Is that